afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Shares with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 on ebizradio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime Series on all major podcast channels. And for the Lunchtime Coaching segment, joining me for our hashtag Candid Conversations with my cousin, all the way from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the USA. Lauren Britz, how are you doing?
Hi, Kev. I am doing so amazing. It's a magical day. So thank you so much for having me on today. It's great to be with you again.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you. And so to kick straight into it, you recommended us chat to someone that you've actually worked with. And, don't you want to give us a slight intro of who we're going to chat to today?
Yes, Kev. So, in the spirit of our segment, Candid Conversations, we have discussed a lot of people that we want to talk to really reveal what's happening now and in the future, and to have the open conversation candidly so that it's not overly edited or overly produced. So I had come across a business coach that I was looking for in my life, and I came across Frank Lind from Get the Edge Coaching Group. Frank is a performance business coach who works with individuals and entrepreneurs to streamline and grow their businesses, essentially. I've worked with him personally, and I just knew that, once we worked together, that we had to share what Frank had to offer to the conversation we were having about business, about mindset in business, a really 360 holistic approach. So it was, I got so much value from it. So I'm happy to introduce Frank Lind, all the way from Fort Lauderdale, I guess, or Boca, Florida, USA. So welcome, Frank, so much to our Candid Conversations with Kevin and his Lunchtime series.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me on the show today. Appreciate that.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. So, Frank, I like to kick it off straight away. Don't you want to sort of just give us some insight? I mean, like Lauren's already shared with us, like what it is you do and who you are, and I just want to sort of give us a bit of an intro of you and what it is you do.
Sure, absolutely. My job is to get people aligned with their vision. I mean, that's the simple way of looking at it, but it's more about having them become accountable for what they do in their business. So many times we get so wrapped up in what I've found over the course of the last several years is that as a business owner, you're overwhelmed. You have so many things in front of you, so many things to do. You're being tugged in so many different directions. You see something online that says go with YouTube. You have another one that says go with Instagram. Another one that says go with, you're just tugged everywhere. And business owners, they try it. They go for that shiny object. And my goal is to get them focused on that one thing. What are we trying to accomplish? And when they realize that, wow, one thing, no, that's it. And they find out that the mindset is really what it comes down to. Their mind is, going in all kinds of different directions because we are easily distracted as humans, not just as business owners.
All right.
We kind of go in all these different directions. So my job is to say, let's pick something that we can work on. What's the most valuable thing within your business right now that we could spend the next 4-8 weeks really focused on that's going to help you create more revenue? And it's my job to kind of keep that ball rolling. That's it in a nutshell.
Fantastic. So I know that you wanted us as well. You also mentioned that there's a good conversation to be had, and something that's also sort of piqued our brains as well is the future of business. You wanna set the tone for us on that?
Yeah, living in South Florida, and we're all having a slightly different experience. So my experience is we are seeing the end of a certain pandemic here, anyway, in Florida. I don't want to compare it to the rest of the world. I know South Africa is having their own experience. I know most of America is having their own experience. But when you live in America, living in a state, it's kind of like living in your own little country. So we are, in a way, business as usual. So we might be leading the forefront of that in some regard. What that brings me to, and I'm a visionary. I love being ahead of the curve. I like thinking about what's coming up, or even thinking about what to create next for what's coming up. And one of my what's really on my mind is two things. What is the future of business, entrepreneurship? You know, what's the future of small businesses all over the world? What is the future of entrepreneurs? How do those two things look in the future? And I don't mean, 2036. I mean, next week, next year, everything is moving so fast. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very open question, but it's an interesting one because I think that a lot of people's worlds have changed. And it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. Do we go back to a normal that we used to have? Is it semi-normal? Is it completely transformed? What is it?
And Lals, just to add to what you're saying, I think, what also on that question is, Frank, if you could share like your perspective on this, is because we tend to want to go back to what we know and we like the way we used to do things. And there's so much evidence to prove that that's not the reality. That's not where the world is moving, right? So it's a fascinating question.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, as you mentioned, it's human nature. We tend to gravitate towards what we know. What I like to keep my clients and my business owners that I work with is that keeping them fresh with new ideas and new thoughts. I had a conversation with a client just the other day, and she was telling me, the techniques that we're doing, it's sometimes I push back on you, but when I realized how well that I take to it later and how I could pull from it on other things moving forward, it makes it easier to really understand. And that's really what it's about, is giving business owners the tools they need so that they can pull from those things and use them later so that they're not just stuck with the same old, same old. The only way we're going to be able to shift is to have new ideas and new thoughts about new things. And that way we're able to say, let's make some changes. Kind of going back to what Lauren was saying is that, as business owners, we're going to have to shift and pivot a lot faster than we ever have. We know things in a drop of a hat could change. And again, being able to, and honored to work with Lauren and Christian, is that, knowing that at any moment can shift, and having them have the right tools to go, it doesn't matter if it shifts. We're ready, we're prepared, and we're going to take this on, the way it should be. And again, that comes down to mindset. How do we do that? How do we really get them prepared for that? And there's exercises to do that, because again, it's like anything else. Nobody wants to change. I mean, it's scary, it's new, and all those things that come with it. But once we start to familiarize ourselves with doing it on a regular basis, it makes it easier and prepares us for those things.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I always find fascinating is especially from a coach to a coach, what is the one thing that really people really need to start focusing on, and what is that one thing that you're noticing from a coach's perspective that needs to change with running a business, being an entrepreneur, the future of how we do life and work?
I'd like to say that fear is probably our biggest obstacle, and I know it sounds so canned, and it sounds like, oh, fear, but it is true. We tend to fear so much, and that's kind of what keeps us from accomplishing those goals, whatever they are.
True.
And usually we have pre ideas of what we're going to say prior to it happening because of fear. We have the same. It's like walking into a store and, what do they say to you? Can I help you? No, just looking. It's the same phrase. Our mind is kind of set up the same way. It fears, so it comes up with the same canned responses. And those canned responses are what keep us from going any further. I can't do it. I don't have, the right team. I don't have the amount of money. I don't have, all these things that were just canned phrases. We say them to ourselves, and they keep us from accomplishing those goals we want. And that's kind of scary. So people don't like, again, we live in that comfort zone, and we have everything we want. I think as a society, we're very spoiled, if I can go out and say that. We have a lot of things that at our fingertips. We can get anything we want. I can snap my fingers and have somebody deliver me coffee to my door. It makes it very easy. And I don't think people realize that you have to step outside of that comfort zone and be afraid once in a while, be scared. and be able to say, hey, you know what, it might not work out. And that alone mentally is going to prepare you for other things. So I think fear is the thing that really holds back a lot of business owners. And I see it a lot, and it's a challenge. But once they overcome that, it's such an easy road. Such an easy road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Loz, I mean, in terms of, I mean, you're running more than one business at the moment, and there's more on your plate. In itself, do you relate to this? Like fear was one of the things. Like, oh my God, I don't know like what the hell to do now. What's the next best thing here?
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because Frank did ask me during one of our sessions, do I think I'm fearless? Except the answer was yes, but it was in a way that he did not expect. He expected people to be more excited about being fearless. I guess I was more concerned. I am not fearless. I do have fear. I will always take the opportunity to see what's on the other side. So I guess that makes me not fearless. Maybe it's like curiosity in a way that will drive me through the fear. But the fear is still there. And I got to tell you, the fear, it keeps me, the strong fears are no good. I mean, those canned responses, those, those old school habits, the old drudgery, that's no good. But the fear I have, I guess, the nerves I get when I go out and have a meeting, or I'm doing a presentation, or I'm on a shoot, or I've had to produce a shoot and it has to be successful. That fear is there all the time, and it keeps me really on my toes. But Frank has had me drive through other fears. You know, my two businesses are in two very different industries. One would think the one of them is a very male-dominated industry. A big fear I've had, sort of going into that, like how am I going to be perceived here? And just to find ways to get through it. You know, it's a daily habitual change. And I will say that for me personally, I think it goes as fast as you're willing to go, but sometimes it also goes slow because you're building from the ground up and you're taking your time. And you one day wake up and it just escalates, you know, because you've been so consistent with your habits. So it is real. I do think that, though, moving into the future, entrepreneurship will change. I think the entrepreneur itself is going to change from the guy in the high-rise building to the guy who's the person who's self-employed or is growing a company, a small business, to people who are looking to be 100% sustainable in their lives, in business and work, moving to, you know, large pieces of ground, building sustainability while building business at the same time. I know people who are living off cryptos doing that. So I do see it emerging here more. I see similar things in South Africa in a slightly different way. People coming up with, and South Africans are renowned for this, because we've always had great need for something or another. And where there's a need, we come up with brilliant ideas. I mean, South Africans are just renowned for solving problems, you know?
Sorry, Lars, but like that leads me to one of the questions here is, you know, Frank, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but location-independent solutions. So, you know, so that we're not bound by the location that we're in. Are you finding that as a trend in business? Are you finding that, you know, and also how does that apply to entrepreneurs and big corporates? Are we doing more of that? Are you finding that as well from a coaching perspective?
Yeah, the great part about it is that I feel everything is kind of breaking down. You know, the medical field's breaking down, the religious field's breaking down, the government's breaking down, entrepreneurship is breaking down. I mean, it's all kind of breaking down, which I feel is great, because it's a shift that we're going to see in the world. And, you know, again, when I was growing, I was listening to what Lauren says. When I was growing up, my father would always say, well, the company's going to take care of us. You know, the company's going to say, we've got money in, you know, put aside for Social Security. You know, all that has changed. That no longer applies. Now it comes down to, we need to take care of ourselves. We'll put money aside. And we'll do that by however we feel like, again, crypto or real estate or any of those other forms of monetary gain that we can use for our benefit. We're going to decide that as entrepreneurs. We're no longer going to give our money to a 401k and have somebody, lose it. My mother was very unfortunate. She had saved her whole life for a 401k, went in the next day and it was completely gone. Every penny was gone.
Was that the recession?
Yeah, so she walked in back in, I think it was 2008,
Yeah.
when she was going through all this stuff that, they were doing with the prime loans and all the fun stuff. And she walked into the bank and they said, you have no money anymore. And she had worked her whole life for that whole amount of money, and it was gone in a matter of a second.
Yeah.
So I think right now entrepreneurs are and even business owners are looking for new ways for that not to happen, where they're going to be like, I'm going to take control of my life, my family, my funds, and I'm going to have to do things our way. And that does require a different mindset, because there are people still out there that are going, well, they're going to, the government's going to take care of us. We're going to be okay. Well, things are going to shift, because at the drop of a hat, anything can change, as we already have seen, unfortunately. But that new mindset, again, like Lauren and her companies, these are groundbreaking companies that said, you know what, no more. We're doing this ourselves. We're going to make it work. And if it comes down to it, it's because of us we didn't make it, not because of somebody else. And that really makes you push a little bit harder. So I see the change there.
That's so true, and Keva, it's and thank you for that, Frank. I appreciate you saying that, because it is the driving force behind our businesses, is that we have realized, and coming from another country, having lived in a different democracy, having been brought up in apartheid, whatever the story is, I'm now in a position, or I've put myself in a position where I have to decide, I have to make my own decisions, make my own wealth. But with that said, I wanted to come back around to what you said about, the one location entrepreneur. And, I was reading this, it's a COVID response company. They do some research to see how societies go, doing during this interesting time. It's called McKinsey.com. And they've said that during their research, they've only noticed that only about 20% of jobs out there in the world are actually more efficient done remotely. So they believe that there's going to be a strong push to people coming back to physically in contact. There will always be now this remoteness, the way we're doing it. I mean, if we, Kev, when the pandemic came, you pivoted faster than most humans I've ever seen pivot. You were like, what is this device that I need to use and talk to other people? We used to have Skype, I guess, back in the day, but I'm sure it's still out there. But we had other options, and we started using them. Now, it will be great to be back in person. Maybe there's something to that. What happens when people are in the same room? Both of you could speak to that dynamic. But they do say, it's not all what we think it is. People are very remote. But even the remote place that I work in once a week, it's an office. Everyone's just rented an office space. They don't work for each other, but they all work together as a group now. And it's even better. You need a lawyer, you need a this, you need a that. They're all in the same building. So it's actually amazing.
Yeah. So, Frank, to that point, so do you find that, because remote working is what it is, and, it has its ups. And for me, I love working remote. I get to do this, with people all over the world now. But, there is an essence of connection that I think, and that, some studies are actually showing how people are losing a lot of connection, and they're getting depressed. They're feeling really stunted, and, they can't find that connection. And they also get into the habit of just doing that usual kind of life that they have now, working remotely. So they even extend that extension of disconnection is even more impactful. What is the solution to that? What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think that there's, for me, I think that the disconnect is a bigger picture. I don't think that the disconnect is basically just us not being able to get together. I think it's the opportunity where you're being forced not to be able to get together. And that puts a different stress on you than being able to say, hey, I can get together with Kevin and Lauren anytime I want, opposed to you can't get together with them, go online. So I think that plays with our heads a little bit, and that is depressing. But again, I just, as a matter of fact, I was listening to Lauren, and I had just quoted a client who wants me to go to Orlando and do a seminar. And all I was thinking of is, do I really want to drive all that way? I mean, like, you know what I mean? It's like before I would be jump in a car, take a drive, I'm going to have a good time, but now it's like, is it worth it? And we start to rethink everything because it's now I don't want to say an inconvenience, but we're starting to think differently about how we approach it. Now, again, we're going to have an opportunity to meet with a lot of business owners for we call it a business mixer in a couple of days at a local restaurant, and we get together. So we have that opportunity to shake some hands and give some hugs and be able to talk to each other again. But if you feel that it's something that you don't want to do, you don't have to. So I think it's having the opportunity to say yes or no is what's driving people a little bit batty, because when the government says you can't do it, that's depressing in a lot of ways. But be able to go, hey, you know what? I don't know if I want to drive that far to Orlando because it's kind of an inconvenience.
It's,
right now.
3.5, 4 hours ish.
Yeah.
In a straight line.
Yeah, we can go on Zoom. It's much easier.
It's true. I mean, we do miss the human connection. And I guess the idea is that now we can choose. Like, do we want to go in on the connection or don't we? We don't have to. And Absolutely. I think, that emerges a whole new entrepreneur as well. It's I've seen a lot of people take on currently like social enterprise instead of just taking on enterprise.
Right.
Their enterprises are becoming more social, and they're, Kev, the people here are starting to care a lot about what you give away. People are becoming vigilant. And I want to say that, and I don't want to compare the two, but South Africans live in a state of vigilance that you can't imagine. So it's interesting to watch people become vigilant of their surroundings, vigilant of the person next to them, vigilant of what's happening. And when they do, they start to really care. And they have a lot of power that they actually put forward. Now a lot of enterprises are giving away, slicing off 10% on the top of their profit and giving it to a good cause, something that people care about, and still making a profit. They're not a charity, but they understand giving a little and keeping the rest is a good balance for your business and for sustainability in the future. So social enterprise is becoming huge on this side of the pond. And I can only imagine enterprise in general is probably going to be picking up in South Africa, I hope, very soon as well, as the pandemics clear out and people come up with amazing ideas.
I think that's what's going to breed that. In times of pressure, we create those diamonds, and I think that we're all being pressured in some form or another. As you mentioned, when I first started, I was a shake your hands, go out and meet coach. I did nothing on Zoom, on anything online. I had to learn what Zoom was. I thought it was a TV show when I was growing up. I was like, Zoom. And it was scary. I mean, I was fearful of it. I'm like, I don't know anything about it. I'm going to lose clients. They're going to be like, how do we get online? There's interruptions. My dog barks. All these things went through. Now it's second nature. My dog barks, they laugh, and we move on. If we get disconnected, we reconnect. It's not a big deal. It's just so second nature. But I think that, having those options is going to create more opportunity for people. And we have to look for the opportunities, not so much what's not happening, but what do we see that we can actually benefit from? Not as only humans, but as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So, I mean, Frank, one of the questions that I have here as well is from a leadership perspective, it's something I'm very passionate about and very often get involved with. But from your perspective, what is the leadership, the most important leadership lesson that we need to learn, and that's currently big on the radar kind of thing?
In my experience is that leadership is a display of being able to follow what somebody is setting forth. So what I mean by that is that, are we setting examples? And I think very rarely do we set the right examples as leaders. Those examples have to be led. I lead a lot of teams, here where I'm at, online and offline. And one of the things that people always ask me is, what do you do? And I said, I lead by example. If I'm going to show up, they got to show up. And it's about showing up and showing up. So those things have to be led by the leader. The leader has to set the tone for how they want the culture of the business, how they want the culture of the organization, how they want the culture of the family. However that is, they set the tone. And that leadership can be taught, but it has to start with that initial leader to lead the way, and be able to set forth, a great example. Whatever I do, I in any corporation, I always say, well, how's the leadership? And usually if it suffers, so is the company. The company's going to suffer. I did a seminar for an organization, and I sit down the whole table. And one of the things that we did was based off of Howard Hughes. And if you're familiar with Howard Hughes, he was one of the wealthiest men in the world for a very long time here in America. And he would buy an organization and he would dress up. So he had this habit of dressing up like, if he bought an airline, he would dress up like a baggage handler, and he'd go see how it was. He'd walk around.
Great idea.
Yeah. And then he'd see how's things going here? And they'd tell him all the problems. He's the new guy, right?
Awesome.
And then he would take off his costume and he'd say, well, here's the changes we're going to make. And so I kind of set up a program similar to that where, the owner would sit and listen to their team talk about how the organization was, be very transparent about it. And I had one of the employees say to the owner, "You're never here." And he was like, kind of looked at him, and I kind of just sat there, and he goes, "You aren't. When I have questions, you're not there to answer them. So how do I find my answers? I have to find them myself." And that's a challenge. Now that kind of leadership is him not only bringing me on board to do that, which takes leadership, but he has to listen to every employee, tell him the challenges that company's having. And Kevin, I've had business owners go, "I don't want to do this."
I'm sure.
Seriously, they're like, "I don't want to do this. Yeah, it's too hard. This is hard. I don't want to hear it." And by doing that, it kind of shuts the doors. But that's a true leader, somebody who's willing to go, "I need to hear what you have to say. This is important to me and the company," and that really kind of pushes them to the forefront. So I think leadership starts with example, setting that example.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I will say my one business is in its infancy, really. It's just starting. It's a small business, but it's going to scale into a very large business, hopefully. That's the plan. And to know that in order for me, that's my dream. I'm not doing that for anybody else. It's just, what I want to do. But Frank and all the mentors I've ever had, all the conversations I've ever had, all the training I've ever had, great business coaches like Frank have really driven that home, which is why we've taken our time, really, because it's not just learning about business, it's learning how to lead people, how to suddenly sit in front of somebody and listen to that, and then be humble and have humility on it. And it's smart. At the end of the day, it's smart. I mean, but we have feels about it, right? We're human and we haven't had the opportunity to explore these feelings. So to sit in a space like that, for me, is actually heaven. I love that level of uncomfortability because it's controlled, it's mediated. But you're now in a space where you get to learn things that people will generally not tell you. And the gems that are in that mud, so to speak, are incredible. And I know that, like my business, I'm building it slowly, but I know at some point it's going to be the last piece of the puzzle will be inserted. It will always be a changing organism, but it will have a solid foundation with, I'm hoping, very great leadership. And, I think leadership is not that easy. I think it's actually a very difficult position to put yourself in, although I think some people are just driven to want to do it regardless. But I do think people can learn. They can learn to be leaders as well, Absolutely.
Before I get to my next question, do you have a question that you want to ask, Lars?
Go for it. No, you go for it, Kev.
Because listening to you guys now is like one of the things that's I think so important, and for a lot of people that struggle with this in leadership is how do I make the next best decision? And I think you're touching on it. Sitting down with your employees, getting that feedback. It's like straight on accountability. Like don't mess around here. Like these are your employees. Take responsibility for what's not happening right here. That's like a very obvious way. What else do we do? Like in terms of how do I create better decisions? How do I make better decisions for my business, for my employees, for my life?
It's interesting that the way anything that I've done is that business owners tend to think they have to have all the answers, and they don't. They could turn to the people that they put in these positions to give them and help them with the answers that they need. That's why they're there. Again, I had the honor of going to Providence, Rhode Island, and I flew there to meet with a sales team. And the problem that they were having, the challenge is when they brought me on board, they said, Frank, we have two sales teams. We have the young sales team and the older sales team, and they don't get along. And I was like, okay. And they said, what we'd love is to them to get together and work as a team. And if they could, our revenue would go through the roof. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So they brought me out for a keynote, and we went into a seminar, and we kind of talked a little bit about it. The first thing I said is, all right, everybody stand up, and I want you guys to switch seats, because I don't want anybody sitting with somebody that they're familiar with. We got 200 sales guys looking at me like, who the hell is this guy, right? What the hell? And so we kind of split up, and then, I said at each table, I want you guys to talk about some of the challenges that you're having as a sales rep, and talk to somebody from the young group and the older group, and you guys mingle. And they were able to do that and write down all the ideas. And then I said, and then I want you to talk to the owner about it. And I had a lady tap me on the shoulder at the end of the seminar, and she said, I've been here for 17 years, and I've never had my opinion heard by anyone in this organization. And she was the secretary of the CEO.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I've been dying to give my opinion. And she goes, to have my boss listen to me was great. And she goes, I've never had that before. So, things like that to me really stick in my mind. Again, that was, 3 or 4 years back, but I'll always remember her tapping me on the shoulder and just saying, to be able to say what's on my mind and to say what I think would help the company grow or help the company become better is an honor. And once you have the buy-in from your employees and they're willing, I'm strong into teams. I think a team is a great thing to have. Yeah. When I have my business, my team was it. They mattered more to me than anything. When they say customers first, no, my team was first. And everything that they did was to become the best at what they did. I would groom them to be me. And that's what I wanted. I wanted them to be leaders. I wanted them, and they all went on to do great things. And that's the kind of thing that you want to put forth as a leader in an organization. How can I turn them into me so that they can do their own thing and create their own businesses? And by having that opportunity, once a leader, or an owner, or a CEO, or business owner is able to say, to the janitor, what do you think? What can we be doing better here? And they tell me, trust me, they've got an opinion. I've heard them. They've got things they've been wanting to share for a long time.
Oh, wow. That's got to be interesting to watch and listen to.
Yeah, it's strange how we take that for granted. Like we take, because it's the cleaner and, it's someone who's, every day you just kind of see them and you don't really say hello kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yet they have an opinion. They know so much more than you're actually giving them credit for.
Yep. They
Yeah, and
watch, they watch.
it is amazing. I'm super passionate about stuff like that. I really want to see who's around. The people that, as I'm growing my team, I want to invest in these human beings. I really don't want to do the same thing we've always done and hire on the dollar and it's this minimum wage. I want to invest. Our business can only be what I'm envisioning for it if those people feel seen, heard, and listen. You know, our South African culture is very tribal. Okay, we are a tribe of many nations, but we are a tribe. And tell any of us we're not, and all of us get together real fast, right? We are only allowed to fight with ourselves and each other. It's a weird thing, but it's interesting how that has helped me a lot in bringing teams together. Slowly, like figuring out who matches who and just utilizing all sorts of great things, but really finding the people who are passionate in helping you forward your business. The truth is not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
You know, I have one particular person in my life that is part of our team, and she told me, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, but I would love to help you manage your own business. Gold, you know, she's not going to run away. She's involved and she's part of the family. But one of the things that I am finding with people in general, entrepreneurs, and that the ability to take the shift and make the shift, and this comes to my next question is, and it probably leads into the question of fear. I do experience two very different mindsets in America versus South Africa, where I get to spend some time. And in America, where I run my businesses, I don't think people believe in themselves that much. I know this is a general thing to say, but a lot of the people that are in this shift mode, they're like, you know, I want to, but I can't. And I know it's a mindset shift, but it's like really becoming quite stark. You know, what do you say to a person who is in this limbo? You know, other than the usual stuff, go for it, you can do it. You know, what do you say to a person who's thinking of starting a business, but they're absolutely just stuck and terrified?
Yeah.
You know, and I will say setting up a business in America it's no easy joke, but it's easier than South Africa. So the bureaucracy is just different. But what do you say to someone like that? What do you say, Frank? What would you say?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that you know, over the course of my business and having my own company, I had probably 4 or 5 assistants, and I went through them over the course of about 12 years, and I was fortunate enough to have one of them reach out to me recently and wanted to be coached, and I was a little surprised at that, and she said, I want to start my own company, and I'd like you to coach me. And I said, well, this is completely different than us working together. You know what I mean? There's exercises involved, and it's a lot of work. You know, I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but it's hard. If you want to, now is the time to turn back. And she said, no, I want to do this. And I said, okay. So I brought her on as a client recently. And one of the things is that every week I check with her. So how you doing? You know, and she gives me that. I'm doing good. Okay. Tell me the truth. How are you doing? She goes, I'm scared. I go, okay, great. Now we're on something. You know, I need you to be honest and transparent. And we set that relationship up early. And even though we know each other and we work together, and you know, she went off and did her thing and led a team and led several teams actually. And she came back. She's like, I need to start my own business. I can't do this anymore. I can't work for corporate. I need to be able to be my own boss. And I said, okay. So I said, to do that, you have to, you know, we go back to the fearless part. You have to be, you know, I use the term lion and go out there and hunt, because as a business owner, you're going out and bringing back the food, and you're bringing it back to the den so everybody can eat. Are you prepared for that? Yeah. Okay, great. Next week comes, how you feeling? I'm a little scared. Okay. All right. Well, tell me about it. I feel like I'm investing a lot of time and money in something, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. Okay, where do you get this information from? Well, I talk to people. Why are you talking to people? Well,
Who are you talking to?
yeah, if you want to get something, the reason this system works is because you have to follow the process. And again, I know exactly what you're going through because I went through it. And that's when you could talk to somebody who's been there, it makes it so much easier. I've been there. I've talked to myself. I've been scared. I've been frightened. I go up the mountain alone when it's dark, and all those scary places. Shine a flashlight in a dark place, and I've been there, so I know what you're dealing with. But what you have to do is you have to push past it, because on the other side of that is where the light is. But you have to keep going. And most people don't want to go that far. They're like, this is too much. So that's where you create that big why. What is it? Why are you doing what you're doing to get what you want? Okay. If your why isn't big enough, it's not going to sustain the beating you're going to take on your way there. It's not. It's a colorful way of putting it, but you're gonna take a beating on your way. But you have to know what's the reason you're going for what you're going for. If it's for money, turn back, because it's not about money. It's got to be something that you want. And she said, I want and this is what she tells me. She says, I want my son someday to look and say, my mom did this for me. No. And I said, that's your why. And you hang on to that when everybody else is telling you can't do it. And she does every week. She looks at that big why. Her son is that big why. It gives me chills just talking about it. That's what she wants. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, it takes that drive, and fear is that thing that's in your head, and you gotta work past it every single week.
Just don't stop. Just keep going. Don't stop, no matter what.
Absolutely.
Just keep going. Just laugh and keep going, and look like a crazy person. It's all good.
Absolutely. We're here for the experience. That's all it is.
What else are you gonna do? You might as well.
Yep, absolutely.
But to add to that question, because and Lauren and I often find that we are quite in sync when we just thinking. Because my next question was, when I look in the mirror, how should I react to myself? I know for my daughter, I grew up in an environment where, and Lauren, this our families didn't kind of go, you are amazing, you are the best, you can do this. That's not what we grew up with. So, with my daughter, from the age of 3 years old, I've been telling her, see yourself, acknowledge yourself, recognize who it is looking back at you in that mirror. Frank, what is that we need to know? Because I think that lends itself to Lauren's question, is that fear that's holding us back. What do we need to convey and start cultivating within ourselves about who's looking back at me in the mirror?
Good question.
My thought is that it starts with your identity. So who is it that you believe you are? And that's really the start of it all. If you believe that you're never going to make it, and you believe what everybody's been telling you, then that becomes your identity. And that identity is who you're looking at in the mirror. What you want to do is you want to create a new identity, however you need to do that, by saying, listen, I'm not going to follow that path. I always joke with my clients and say, a doctor, when he puts on that white lab coat, everybody looks at him like, hey, this guy must know a lot, right? He's got a white lab coat on. What makes him so smart, right? But as soon as he puts that on and the stethoscope around his neck, you go to this guy, hey, you'll tell him anything, right? Hey, I've got problems with my back. Because the identity of that doctor and that image is already linked in our minds of who this person is. He's got the answers. And we need to create that identity for ourselves, where we look in the mirror and say, I've got the answers. I could do this. This has nothing to do with anybody else but myself. It's a mental thing. And once you're able to create that image in your mind of who you want to become and who you are, and eliminate all the crap that you've been listening to your entire life, which is meaningless, that's when you start to forge forward. That's when you start to go, you know what? I'm incredible. I used to joke. I don't know if you can cuss on the podcast. I used to have a phrase when I would get on stage, and I would say, "I own this effing place." You know, I mean that's how I would get on stage. You know, 200 people would say, "I own this effing place." You know? And that to me is what helped me to eliminate fear, because all in my mind, all I thought it was, if I created this, then it's mine. I own it. So in every form, that's how I identified with myself. Now that took time to do. That took time to do. It wasn't something.
I'm just listening to, because Laura, like you and I have chatted about this before, like, you know, how people hold on to an identity.
Yeah.
And we get stuck there, and you know that means
crisis
our lives,
mode,
and
right.
then we function from that identity. We make choices from that identity. We live our lives from that. And I mean, Frank, you're saying now, like, create yourself a new identity, and I think a lot of people haven't even thought of that. They like, what the hell's that mean, right?
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of the identity, and you know, I talk generally, is often pulled in from outside forces. And I would say probably most of the time. So, you know, there is this new movement of consciousness, which is also in itself very confusing, because everything that emerges has many sides to it. So, you know, it's about the consciousness of it at the end of the day. I really see very unique nuances between the two different mindsets that we play with. They're both amazing, but they function in very, very different ways often. And I would say that, you know, people here are starting to open up to that mindset. And I think a lot of South Africans are already halfway there. You know, it's starting to become clear that we are creators and we can create whatever we want. And that's such a mind-blowing concept that it's actually hard to grasp. It's like trying to plant yourself next to the universe. You know, it's very hard. But the thing is, everybody's born with a desire. Everybody's born with natural abilities. Everybody's born with whatever skill set or learns it later on. But there's always a natural something. And I feel like exploring those natural, you know, nuances about yourself are so important, because it would lead you in so many, it would answer a lot of questions. Which way do I go? Go that way. It's all about really how you feel, but not about your feelings necessarily. And I think that is starting to become a very difficult thing for people. People are looking at themselves. They're probably judging. They're like, oh my God, I'm just looking at myself for the first time. Like, whoa, what is this? Yeah. And then slowly having to mull through it. And it's such a journey, but it's so rewarding. Now, having a business supercharges you through that journey in a way that is unreal. I know there's a lot of business owners that go down on their knees and cry at night. They will not ever admit it.
That's right. We've all been there.
You know, the great thing that makes us leaders is we stand up and we say it's okay, we're human. But I think that inquiry into the self is becoming very interesting for people now. And they are starting to see the light of day, but they also have to get through some other things, I think. And so it can be a little confusing. But I think, like you said, once you pass the fear, once you pass the muddiness of it, and you start seeing the amazing stuff you can create, it really is amazing to one day just sit here and you have a moment where something you've been working towards for a year, 2 years, 10 years emerges in a moment. You know, an overnight success that took 10 years. Yeah. What a phenomenal feeling to live for, especially if you've had to go through that inquiry. So I think that inquiry is causing a lot of drama, but it's a good thing. It's the undoing of a lot of bad habits.
So here's an interesting question. What question should we be asking right now? You know, here in 2021, like, being entrepreneurs, being business owners, helping people, doing what we do, what is, in your opinion, what is the question we should be asking right now? What is the question we should be really wanting to understand?
The question that I would ask myself, and I have repeatedly, is how do I create a better ideal of myself? And by just asking yourself that question, and Lauren touched on something I think is very important, is that, you know, once the footprint has been made in the universe, that footprint's there. It's not like it just dissipates. It stays in the universe. It's like the 4-minute mile. You know, when the first guy did it, Bannister did it, you know, everybody was like, oh, it's impossible. And then after that, within months of him doing it, like 16 people did it. It's like, how do you get to that point? Because the footprint was already placed in the universe. It was placed there because somebody can follow in that footstep. And there is an awakening. And the awakening is that people are starting to wake up to everything that's happening around them and go, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. And I need to find answers for myself. And those answers can only come from within you. And that's why it's best to say, how do I create a better ideal of me? The moment you start to say that is the moment where you start to question more about everything around you and how to become better. There's nothing more beneficial than investing in yourself. There's nothing more important. How do we create that better ideal of us to be able to move through life? And there's been so many people that have done it before us to make it easy to understand and grasp. And like Lauren said, I mean, within a minute, you could have a great idea. That great idea is out there because somebody else has done it. So you're picking up on those frequencies that are surrounding us every day that we can actually start to grasp and go, hey, wait a minute, I can use this. But we have to start by asking ourselves that question, because we, you know, again, the universe isn't going to answer anything unless we have a good question for it. You know, how do I create that better ideal of myself? And it'll answer you. You know, it'll answer you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also, they struggle to find what they are passionate about. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and they're like, oh, you do what you love. It's a business. It's a love and hate relationship sometimes. But yes, I am so grateful to be able to do that. But that didn't just happen. Yeah. You understand? Like, this was planned and organized in a very organized fashion. And now we're here 8 years later in one of the businesses. But I think a lot of them just say to me, but I don't know what I'm passionate about. When I used to teach, the kids would say this, I mean, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, how do you not know that? But I've probably done so much inquiry where I'm like, well, I mean, I just say to people, like, get still. Like, take note of how you feel when you look at something. Like, if you look at a plant and you're like, oh, that's an ugly plant, don't grow plants, you know, or, you know, I think it's simple and extremely difficult at the same time to do that, it seems. But if you can just pay attention to how you feel when you're doing something, even if it's a hobby, like it could totally be your passion in life. And the truth is, it's there to serve other people. So, you know, it's almost your job to kind of inquire to it. It's there for other people too. It's not just for you and your lovely, lovely time.
I think, just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, is that I think what happens is you know, and I'm experiencing this with family members right now, is that they're told that, you know, if they're passionate about something, that's not what you want. And when you get told that too often, too many times, you start to get deflated, and now you start to mold into something that you're not. So now it's harder to find your passion because you lost it. And it's very unfortunate. Again, I have two relatives. Since this is live, I won't. But, let's just say family members. And they discourage, you know, and that's hard to watch, because when you're deflating your children and saying that's not what you want what I tell you, you know, then it's hard for them to come back around and go, well, I'm passionate about this. Can I do that? No, you can't do that. You have to do this, you know? And once, you know, we're told that a lot when we're, you know, growing up, whether it's by our family, whether it's by, you know, governments, whether it's by religions, whether all those things that tell us we can't do something, we start to lose our passion. And not lose it in the sense that we don't know where it's at, but lose it in the sense that this ain't worth it. It's not, I love this, but it's not worth the argument. It's not worth the, you know, having to explain myself. It's just not worth it. You know, I'll follow the pack. But that pack, like you say, is getting smaller. People are starting to go, you know what? I'm doing what I want to do, what I love. Now is the time to do it. So hats off to those people who are doing that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I mean, guys, believe it or not, this has almost been an hour of conversation.
Amazing. Really?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow,
Well, I
that's
mean,
great.
like, if in 1 minute, what would you sum up in conversation in 1 minute to kind of go, okay, you know, if I could share this with people out there today, I'd want them to know that. What would that be?
Me, I would say take the time to love yourself. I don't think a lot of people take that time. And whether you're a business owner or you're just somebody listening to this podcast, you know, just in passing, maybe you found us, you know, I say there's no such thing as accidents. If this is your first time listening, then you're listening for a reason. But take that time to really love yourself. And in that moment of time, you will find so many answers within yourself that you didn't even realize were there. But it starts with that moment of time.
Yeah, I would go off that as well and say, you know, once you do that and you find it and you think you got it, take action. Just do something. Don't tell anybody, even if you don't. Just keep quiet about it. So even if you fail, cool, you fail on your own, that's fine. But just do something. Like, do something. Just take a step. And I'm probably talking to myself here as well now because I have an amazing idea in my mind that I've taken no steps on. But just take the step. And I'm also going to do that.
Yeah, I know a good coach.
I have a great invention in my head and it just won't go away. And I'm like, okay, obviously I need to take a step here. And it's been something I've been hammering myself on. So I'm going to commit to doing that. But honestly, it is something I see with people. Like when you find that spark, it's not for nothing. No matter how frivolous it looks, take an action. Just do it.
Absolutely, I love it, guys. Thank you for the conversation. That was CEO and founder of the Edge Coaching Group, Mr. Frank Lind, and my wonderful candid conversations with my cousin, co-host Lauren Britz Photography Lauren Britz from Lauren Britz Photography. Guys, thank you for chatting and thank you for spending some time with me. I absolutely love that.
Thank you, Kim. It's been awesome. Thanks, Frank. It was great to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Cheers for now. Bye.
See you later. Bye.